All right, guys, welcome back. Today we are talking about mutations, and we're going to be talking about evidence that suggests evolution. So I'm going to kind of lump these two things together. Hopefully I won't take too long. Mutations we talked about before in DNA, right? An accidental genetic code that shouldn't be, but is. And we are going to refer to these as raw materials for evolution, right? Think about it, if you're an artist, you have raw materials, paint, canvas, paint brushes, things, clay, whatever. It's not art yet, but it's going to be used to become something. Saying that's what your mutations are. Right? They're not, it's not evolution yet, but if it's a good thing, if your mutation is a good thing, it could be used to cause evolution. Meaning you could spread, natural selection can cause you to spread that mutation across many generations if you're reproductively successful, and then everyone has it. Right? So mutations are going to create variation. Variation is a good thing. Variety is a good thing. Some variations may be beneficial. I mean, they can be good, they can be bad, they can be neither. Go ahead, popping up down here. All right, so you can have good mutations, you can have bad mutations, you can have neutral. They're nothing. Like if you had two color eyes, that's not really going to be good or bad, right? It's just a thing that exists. So if they are good mutations, the organism will survive better. Take a look at my picture down here. All right, let's pretend that this is the normal species, the bird with a small beak. They all look like that, but this guy has a weird mutation where he gets an extra long beak, which, because if they're eating bugs out of the tree, that is a good thing. It's going to help him survive. He's going to get all the food. While this guy is too busy trying to find food he can get and probably starving, by the time he's done eating, like, he doesn't have the energy left to go reproduce. This guy, not only did he finish eating hours ago and have plenty of energy, he was busy getting all the girls while this guy was still hunting food. So this dude is spreading his genetics because he's able to. All right, so good mutations are going to help you spread your genetics through reproduction. And then eventually it will spread through the entire population. Well, this guy's genetics, because now all the girls are pregnant before he even got a chance, he didn't get a chance to spread his genes. His genes start to disappear. Right? If they are bad mutations, in this case, we are pretending that the long beak is normal and the little beak is the bad thing. Well, no change then, because this guy will starve and not be able to spread his genes. The bad mutation would disappear. Natural selection causes good mutations to spread and bad mutations to disappear. Same rules apply, because this guy 8 hours ago and spent his rest of his day mating. This guy never got a chance to mate. And if they're not good or bad, nothing will happen. It's just a thing. You know, the genes might stay in the gene pool, they may not. Who knows? Mutation that would be neutral for us would probably be the appendix. Our appendix doesn't work anymore. That would be a bad thing, because that should have caused us to die off. But we cook our food, so our appendix, it really wasn't doing anything anyway. So it doesn't matter. So having a non-function appendix is not good or bad for human beings who cook their food. So it stays in the gene pool. It doesn't bother us. And now that we're starting to get appendicitis, that's a different mutation that's happening. All right. So we're done with mutations. That was nice and easy. That was fast. Let's move on. I want to talk about evidence of evolution. Like I said, evolution in and of itself is a fact. It has been witnessed. We have caused it to happen. The question, the theory, is about whether or not we evolved. Did humans evolve from something, or did we just spring out in existence already fully formed as humans? Now, that's the question. The theory is we went through evolution the same as we've witnessed in everything else. The question now is, what did we evolve from? Well, that's where the theories come from, and those theories are based on the evidence that we're going to talk about today. There's a lot more evidence than I'm going to be talking about, just for the sake of time. I chose some of the most common, easy to find stuff, easy to understand stuff. fossil evidence, anatomical evidence, embryological evidence, and the universal genetic code. So, fossil evidence. Many extinct animals leave their fossils behind. That's a fact. Now, here's a geology fact for you, not biology. Geology means studying the rocks. Over time, weather patterns change, leaving behind different kinds of dirt being blown off by the wind, and we end up getting different stripes depending on the different times. So you actually tell like hundreds of years, thousands of years, millions of years based on these stripes. And if you take the animals that died off in this stripe and then line them up with the animals that died in this stripe, and this stripe, and this stripe, and this stripe, it starts looking like a flip book. You line them up, and the dinosaurs really start looking like they're morphing into something else as you go through these geologic stripes. Here's a picture showing that. You arrange them up chronologically, meaning from past to present. Take a look at the bones in the limbs. Make that bigger. Here we go. Humerus, radius and ulna, and the phalanges. It looks like the bird's wing that I showed you earlier. And there's the velociraptor, your friend from Jurassic Park. And you see over time, each one comes from a different geologic stripe, but it starts blending. This one here is still a dinosaur. Right? This is still a dinosaur. We've actually learned since after this picture was made that the velociraptor also would have had feathers. Actually, it looks like they put some on there, but probably larger feathers. This guy should be covered in feathers. But we start seeing a not too different change until you get to the crow, and the crow's bones, even though you get rid of all those feathers and you sit left with the bones, it looks very, very similar to the bones back here. Like I said, it looks like a slow change, like a flip book. That was fossil evidence. Let's talk about anatomical evidence. That was a vocab word, by the way. It means studying what is there physically. Not what it does, but just physically that it's there. And using anatomical evidence, we discover what we call vestigial structures, also a vocab word. This is a body part that's lost its use. Going back to the appendix, it's vestigial. We don't use it anymore. For this whale, these are hip bones. You know what hips are for, guys? Hips are for your lower limbs. Hips are for your legs. It spreads the weight across the two legs. It gives you balance. It's a support structure. Whales don't have anything there to support. Their tails are attached to the vertebrae, not to these hips. This is just kind of floating there, not for anything. Why would a whale have hip bones? Why would they have bones at all that they're not using? Same thing over here. If you look closely, just like that porpoise in the last set of notes I showed you, the whale has finger bones, but they don't have fingers. Those are also vestigial structures. And they don't need individual fingers, so they have flippers. So why? The question now is why? Why would they have these structures that they don't use? These are the facts that they have them. The theory, well, in this case, hypothesis until I add more evidence to it, is that their past ancestors may have needed hips, may have had fingers, and they just evolved away from it. I forgot about this picture. Basilosaurus lived 40 million years ago, also had the bone structure. So this guy probably related to this guy, and this guy probably related to something else that lived on land, had hands and legs, and moved back into the water. Right. Embryological evidence. This is kind of weird, but kind of cool. Embryo, if you don't remember that word we talked about before, are unborn offspring, meaning mom is pregnant, congratulations. We're not calling it a baby though, not yet. Right? For now, it's called an embryo. We're not even calling it a fetus yet. It'll be a fetus later on. Right now, it is called an embryo. And embryos tend to look the same across all species. So check it out here. You can't really see it. Can I make the picture bigger? No, I can't. Okay. This is a fish, and this is a fish's embryo. This is a salamander. They look kind of similar. This is a salamander's embryo. They look identical. The tortoise fetus, the tortoise embryo, looking the same. You see it? Chicken, pig, cat, rabbit. Yeah, that's a rabbit. It didn't develop the ears yet. And human. Across the board, they all look basically the same. It's not until they start getting a little older that you can start seeing differences. And then you can start lumping them in the groups. So the fish and the salamanders are more closely related because they look more similar to each other than the other ones. And then the tortoise and the chicken are probably more closely related because they look more similar than the other one. And then all the mammals are basically still identical at this point. It's a much later stage where the mammals start getting their differences. The more closely related you are, the longer you look similar. Humans and chimpanzees look similar for many, many, many stages. And the universal genetic code. All organisms have the same genetic code. That's right, guys. You're the same DNA as every living thing on here. Your code is a little bit different, but it's the same DNA structure, right? A's, T's, C's, and G's. That is the alphabet that codes your DNA. It's the same alphabet used to code a pig, the same that's used to code a salamander, a cockroach, a plant. Believe it or not, you and look outside, find a tree. You see a tree at your window? Yeah, has the same DNA structure as you. Plants have trees. I'm sorry. Plants have DNA. Trees have DNA. This code is similar for all living things. And guys, we spent months on DNA. It's very complicated. Do you really think something that complicated just happened to spring into existence exactly the same way multiple times, let alone every single time? That's much harder to believe for me anyway. You know, I think it is more likely that it happened to come into existence once and then something just kept reproducing and spreading it. And only the minor differences is what creates different individuals. You know, you and your sibling have almost identical DNA. It's the minuscule amount of differences in that DNA that make you and your sibling look different. You and your pet dog or you and your pet cat also have similar DNA. DNA that says how to grow a heart, a 4-chamber heart nonetheless, how to make it beat, how to make the nervous system function, how to have a liver, kidneys, pancreas. We have all of them, right? Same stuff, but in slightly different positions because the DNA is slightly different, but it is mostly the same. And that's just weird. So I said earlier about 99%, that sometimes I see 97%, so I'm averaging out to 98. 98% of our DNA is the same as chimpanzees. That doesn't mean we came from chimpanzees. That suggests that we and chimpanzees came from a similar source. You know, we have the same great whatever grandparents as chimpanzees do. So that goes back to that divergent evolution that we talked about in the previous group, or the previous notes. That one group split into 2 groups. Those 2 groups have the same DNA. They changed slightly for their own needs, but it was still the same source code. About half of our DNA is the same as bananas, believe it or not. That's right, guys, because half of that DNA has to do with the chemicals that the banana is made out of. And I've taught you guys before, you are what you eat. You know, meaning you are made out of certain chemicals. Where do you get those chemicals? From the food you eat. That means the food is made out of the same chemicals as you, which means the DNA for those chemicals are the same. Every organism on Earth may have evolved from one cell. This is the big theory here. All right. Scientists think that all of these proteins floating around in the beginning of Earth's history somehow managed to come together and start functioning together. When that happened, at the same time, they think a genetic code also came together. All these nucleotides formed together, and creating the first living cell. It survived and it reproduced. Mitosis, splitting in two. Now there's two of them with the same genetic code. Then they split. Now there's four of them with the same genetic code. And then there's a whole colony of them. And they spread across the world. And they're in different environments. So they start going through natural selection in different ways, evolving different ways. You see where this is going? The original source code, the original DNA, just kept spreading but changing slightly. That is the theory. We are all somehow related because we came from that one shared original life form. And the more related we are, the more similar our DNA is, the more similar our bone structures and our organ structures are going to be. All right? So those were only some of the evidence, not all of it. I highly suggest going out and looking things up, try to find out some stuff on your own. But unfortunately, we don't have time to go through everything ourselves together. But if you have any questions, please, please, please show up to my office hours, my Zoom meetings. I would love to talk to you about this kind of stuff. We can do some research together, or just email me, whatever works best for you. All right, guys? Well, go back to Google Classroom, get started on the notes, or get started on the work. Good luck.